So I've never considered myself the biggest J. Cole fan, and I've always wanted to do a music review. So I'm decided to talk a little bit about his new project, The Off Season. Seems like between me and the few people I know that are into rap music, Friday Night Lights is always the pinnacle of his rap career in terms of actual lyrical ability. But his new project, The Off Season, proved me wrong in a couple of different ways. It feels more like a mixtape without any cohesive narrative like For Your Eyes Only had. He starts off the album with 95 South, which is a reflection of his accolades thus far. Begins with a braggadocious line and a few corny lines. I put M on your head like you're Luigi's brother. That's the one everyone's talking about right now. It's an example of him straddling that line between being corny and giving you a hard-ass line. He also has Cameron on this track, which is a pretty big surprise. I haven't seen Cameron rap in a long time. And he doesn't rap, he just talks, kind of solidifying J. Cole's status in the game. It's a bombastic track. It has high horns, it has hi-hats. It's a good intro track. It lets you know, I'm here, I'm about to rap my ass off. I also enjoyed the song My Life with Murray. Murray, from what I can tell, is an industry plant. He's another Fayetteville, North Carolina native. Sounds like the best Sunday service you've ever been to in your life. He raps about his struggle a little bit. He raps about growing up with demons, being addicted to certain drugs, his friends being narcotics. Murray, for all intents and purposes, is a struggle rapper. He's gonna sing his ass off. He'd be a good gospel singer for sure. Applying Pressure, probably one of the more relatable tracks on this album. He talks about living paycheck to paycheck in 2008. He's recognizing that being the nicest doesn't necessarily mean that your bills are always going to be paid. And that, in a way, is relatable. You can be, no matter what career you're in, even if it's not as outlandish as being a rapper, sometimes even if you're the best or you're working the hardest, that doesn't reflect itself in how much money you have or how much you're making. You could still be living paycheck to paycheck. At this point, the middle of the album, I start to get a little bit frustrated. Tonally, there wasn't a bunch of shifts. I've seen a lot of critics say things like, the album feels samey, it feels repetitive. And I tend to agree with that. I think there are a few standout tracks on here that make it more promising than any of the other J. Cole albums that have been released in the past decade or so. Punching in the Clock is a track where you can only assume that maybe J. Cole's going to talk about the redundancy or the mundaneness of having a 9-to-5 job, coming in and coming out, being tired of living this mediocre life under this capitalistic society where it seems very hard to advance in. But he talks about things like being rich and us not having an understanding of his struggles. My question to J. Cole is, what do we not understand? You've rapped about before on how having wealth doesn't equate to happiness. You've rapped about that extensively, so why are you posing the question again? And then to pile onto the egregiousness on the 100 million, he talks about he's not done getting money, he wants more money. He's a millionaire, hundreds of millionaire, but he wants to become a billionaire, I guess. J. Cole's previous deep introspective thoughts are kind of wiped out on the 100 million, where he's just talking exclusively about finances. Pride to the Devil is really interesting to me. He talks about pride as this actual character that makes you regret things, that pride is the one emotion that leads most humans to make their ultimatums and decisions. He gives an in-depth analysis of this emotion, and he talks about pride guiding us in ways that leads us into negative situations, such as being involved in gang life or selling drugs or doing different things you have to get by, doing the bad things for the right reasons, basically. Mumble rapper Lil Baby is on here, who I actually didn't mind for once. I can actually understand him, unlike his cohorts, such as like a Future or like a Gunna. So I did not mind him, and that to me was very surprising. Let Go of My Hand is more the J. Cole we know. It's that introspective, mellow J. Cole. It's very mellow on the beat, not high energy like a lot of the other tracks on here. He talks about the theme of growing older and the passage of time, losing connection with friends we had in the past, or in this case, he's talking about his son telling him recently, "Daddy, let go of my hand," which is hard for me to relate to, but I'm sure at some point the same thing is going to hit me later on in life. So at this point, I don't know if Boz is done rapping, if he just wants to sing, but he only sings on this album, which would be a shame because I've enjoyed Too High to Ride and I've enjoyed him on the Dreamville mixtapes as well. So he doesn't. Black doesn't add anything to this track. Black is what I would like to call a heartless romantic rapper. He also talks about Puff on this track, which I'm not going to go into too much. I think people are making a big deal out of it. Just because he happens to mention Puff doesn't mean he has beef with him. I didn't even know that they fought, but the idea of J. Cole fist fighting with Puff is really funny to me. Moving on, Interlude is just that. It's a current event song. There's no secret that there's a lot that's been bubbling in the world lately, and J. Cole hasn't talked about anything since 2018, and look how much has transpired in 3 years since then. My favorite track on the album by far is Hunger on Hillside. It's a perfect closer. He talks about even though his legacy is built on this music and success, even if he becomes broke or loses his relevancy in the current landscape, that his lyrics will transcend time and will be listened to generations after this. And I genuinely believe that. I think J. Cole has, at this point, solidified his lane. He solidified his spot. We like to meme over J. Cole. We like to poke fun at J. Cole fans, but you have to give him respect for putting a limelight on rapping about things that are not bullshit. There's plenty of rappers that are not rapping about mundane or superficial things, but who is on the same level as a J. Cole? You'd be tough to answer that question. So with this album, I liked it a lot. I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I would go back to it. It's not going to beat Friday Night Lights, and it might not even beat The Sideline Story for me, but I appreciate the feeling of this album. I just wish he had taken a few more risk with this album. I like that he didn't go over his own beats. I do not like J. Cole's production most of the time. I find it flat, I find it boring, I find it cloudy. But overall, I would say good job, J. Cole, on this.